dinner party is quite an experience, and currently the 4th top-rated episode of The Office on IMDb. This is the 9th episode of the 4th season. It's directed by the wonderful Paul Feig, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the events in the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. And I was really keen to see this one because I've tried to avoid spoilers, and for the most part I did actually avoid spoilers for this episode, but I have seen it mentioned on social media, and I was really keen to see why is this being talked about a lot. And I now completely understand why. It starts off in the office, everybody's working late, and I didn't realise what Michael was doing until Jim pointed it out. Michael decided to get onto the phone to corporate and say, "These are my friends, we're not working late, we're all going home." And then he tells Jim, having confessed he doesn't have any plans for the evening because he has to work late. Michael then tells Jim, "Great, you have no plans now because we're not working late. Why don't you come over to a dinner party?" Apparently Michael had been trying to get Pam and Jim over for dinner, and they kept having excuses. But because Jim was meant to be working late, in theory, he now had no excuse. And only when Jim pointed it out, when he said, "I'm starting to suspect that there was no assignment from corporate," only then did I realise what Michael was doing. The rest of the episode is at Michael and Jan's, and we get a tour. I don't like Jan as a character. I mentioned this many times, but even if I did like her, I don't think I would after this episode, and I just wish Michael would leave her. I don't know if it happens. I don't want to know. I want the element of surprise, but I hope he does. She refers to Pam's drawings as doodles, which is really insulting. It's a nice property, though. It's a really nice space. Michael has to apparently sleep on this teeny tiny bed, and dinner is going to apparently be quite some time away. Andy and Angela then arrive. Nice to confirm that they're still dating, because we haven't really had a lot of that in a few episodes. And every now and then, Pam or Jim will escape from the main room to do a bit for the mockumentary, which is, well, documentary, I guess, within the episode, which is quite nice. And you can definitely see the panic in their faces that they're trying to find a way to leave. Jim has a way. He gets a phone call from his landlord. His apartment has flooded, so he and Pam need to leave. But it's not a two-person job, which I would argue actually it probably is if you're trying to save your possessions that might now be sopping wet. But nevertheless, Pam doesn't need to go. And Jim is about to leave. He's about to abandon her. And Pam says to him, "You can buy new stuff, but you can't buy a new party." Which I absolutely loved. And now Jim has to stay. And they have a girls' trip to the kitchen. And Jan gets honestly quite sinister when she starts to talk to Pam, insinuating that Pam was either dating Michael previously or that she was interested in dating him, and she almost seemed like an unhinged, jealous girlfriend. And it rubbed me up the wrong way. In that moment, I really thought actually there's a darkness to this character. She's not just unlikable, but actually I think she could be potentially quite dangerous. And I don't know if they'll expand on that or if this is the worst she becomes, but I am keen to find out. And then Dwight arrives with Beth Grant. I love Beth Grant, so I was rather happy about that. And, well, Michael and Jan then start arguing, but then Michael starts shouting about vasectomies and getting reverse vasectomies and having to get vasectomies again. And it was, on the one hand, it was funny because it's not something somebody normally just starts shouting about chaotically. But to actually listen to the words and the things that Jan has made him do and then undo and do, and it's just, it's heartbreaking that she's really dragging Michael through so much emotional torment, and she doesn't seem to care. So I guess on the surface, the outburst seemed funny, but in the reality, that's devastating for Michael. And Michael, I can't believe I'm saying this. With season 1, Michael, I never expected to get to this point. But Michael is so sweet, and I really want the best for him. Yes, he sometimes says things inappropriately and does things that are not suitable, but I feel like he always has good intentions. And he always wants to spend time with other people and make other people happy. And then for Jan to really take advantage of him and cause him potential long-term damage emotionally. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but this is what I'm seeing from this scene. And she just went from bad to worse. they're at the dinner table. Pam is worried that Jan has maybe poisoned her food, which honestly at this point, I don't think she would. I don't think she'd be murderous, but who knows. And then the argument continues, and Jan breaks Michael's television screen with a Dundee, and it gets really loud, and the police arrive, which I didn't expect. I didn't see it taking that direction, to the point where, well, actually, before we get to that, Michael did say something that I think was uncalled for. Not that I'm saying Jan didn't deserve to be spoken like this, but after she smashed the TV with the Dundee, Michael said to her, "Good luck paying me back on your $0 salary." And I do think Jan was a bit unhinged before she lost her job, but I do feel like maybe her behaviour is escalating because her job was her identity and she's lost that. So for Michael to then say that she's got a $0 salary and reinforcing the fact that she's lost everything that she worked hard for, not saying it was relevant or not. As I've mentioned before, I don't think she should have been fired without some kind of written warning. I don't think it should have just gone from day 1 employed, day 2 see you. Well, it wasn't quite day 2 see you because they were interviewing before she even found out she was getting fired. But on the one hand, I don't think that was handled correctly. On the other, I do think some action needed to have been taken, but I don't think she should have just been let go completely, unless there were written warnings that we're not aware of. But certainly we weren't made aware of that. But either way, the point there is that I do think Michael shouldn't have said that, but it's not that I think she doesn't deserve it. So I can see both sides of that. And yeah, the police arrive and even suggest that Michael goes home with somebody else for the night. He tried to go home with Jim, but remember, Jim's apartment is flooded, so he ends up having to go with Dwight, and we end with everybody going their separate ways. And it was an experience. It was a very intense experience. I can absolutely see why people talk about this a lot, and now I can actually pay attention as well. Now I can actually pay attention to what people are saying about it, which is great. And I feel so many things, and yet also I feel a bit numb because I just kind of got to the end and just sat there and thought, what was that? And I have no idea what to expect from Jan going forward. As I said, I hope Michael leaves her, but at the same time, we get episodes like this when she's around, so I don't know what I want. Either way, I can see why Dinner Party is rated very highly. It is a very interesting episode of The Office, and needless to say, it's one that I really thoroughly enjoyed. My top favourite? Probably not. I do tend to prefer the ones that are actually in The Office. I really like the environment. But at the same time, Dinner Party is pretty spectacular, and I'm sure I will binge watch the series again at some point once I've finished, however many years down the line this will be. And I will look forward to watching this one again. And I'm curious, very curious, to see what happens with Jan and Michael next.